You have tuned in to the E-commerceaholic. My name is TJ Gamble, and I am here to help you get more from your e-commerce store. Now, if you're new around here and say you're a merchant and you're looking to grow a powerhouse e-commerce brand, or maybe you're otherwise gainfully employed in an e-commerce trade and you're looking to deliver enterprise-grade e-commerce services, well, consider hitting that subscribe button and help us grow this channel into a resource that can help you fulfill those goals. Whether you're new or not, go ahead and hit that thumbs up button if you would. Help us spread the word of the gospel according to the e-commerceaholic. Today, I've got some great guests lined up in a series. You know, we're always trying to bring you value, and this has been a hot topic in the Magento community. And so we're going to talk today about Magento Cloud. So go ahead and post your questions in the chat. I've got my list of questions I'm going to go through first, and then a little later in the broadcast, we're going to start taking your questions. If you happen to be catching this in a replay, post your questions in the comments of this video, and I will do everything I can to get you an answer. So my guests, I'll let them introduce themselves. This is the first time we've had 3 guests with this live stream set up. We had a lot of problems last week, and we overcame those to give you some great content on taxes. This time we've got an even more elaborate setup, so if we have some problems, it is Friday the 13th. Problems are liable to crop up, but we're trying some new things here, so bear with us if we have some problems. But guys, if you would, go ahead and introduce yourselves.
Hey TJ, I'm Chris Hedge. I run product management for Magento Commerce. That includes the core commerce application M1 and M2, and then also the Magento Cloud that we're excited to be here and talking about today.
I'm Doug McIver. I work in our solution consulting group with our solution architects for the cloud product, and have been around the Magento ecosystem since about 2010 when I first joined Magento.
And hi, I'm Matthew Zimmerman. I lead the engineering function for Magento Commerce. So everything Chris owns, I own as well. And today we will be drinking a nice bottle of Garrison Brothers Texas Straight Bourbon Whiskey.
Went with the Texas, got the Texas jersey in the background, going with the Texas whiskey. I think we're all going local today. I actually broke out my Clyde Mays Alabama style whiskey. First time I've ever tried this. It said Alabama style on it. I had to buy it, like I didn't have any options, right? So we're going to enjoy a drink this afternoon, and we're going to talk about Magento. So let's get right into the questions. I know there's going to be a ton of questions from the viewers. Again, feel free to go ahead and submit those questions. It may be a little while before we get to them, but throw them into the chat. So I think it was 2016 at Imagine that Magento Cloud was introduced, so it's been around for over a couple of years now. And back then, I wasn't as plugged into the Magento community as I am now, and maybe it was part of that, but maybe it wasn't. I think it took a lot of people by surprise. It was definitely the surprise announcement of 2016. And hosting is one of those things that it's one of those services that's traditionally been provided by the community. And there were a lot of hosting providers back then, and there's still quite a few of them kicking around. So what all is considered when making a decision from the mothership, from Magento themselves, to begin absorbing some of the services like hosting that are traditionally provided by the community?
Well, I mean, it was a really considered decision when we made that move. You know, a lot of it was driven by what our customers and prospects were looking for. I mean, as you know, like SaaS options have gotten more and more prevalent, cloud options have gotten more and more prevalent, and there was just a desire from parts of the market to have that sort of solution delivered directly from Magento rather than via a hosting partner. It also let us focus on really providing a more complete solution. You know, Magento's always sort of focused on the e-commerce platform and not didn't really focus on the sort of deployment aspects and that sort of the infrastructure and how you actually operated the system. And so it left some gaps that the community had to work around about how you sort of move through a deployment pipeline and those types of pieces. And finally, it was a way to get closer to our customers. in older projects, there was a partner involved that was right there. There was a hosting vendor that was right front lines, and we often felt like a little bit arm's length. And we don't want to push people out of the way, but we want to have a clearer understanding about what's going on with our customers and how we can make the product better to meet their needs.
So, the first thing that came to mind when someone mentioned that Magento was getting into kind of this turnkey solution was the kind of, the failure of Magento Go. And that was, for those that maybe haven't been around Magento as long as some of us, Magento Go was basically a SaaS platform that Magento put out there to kind of go after we'll call it the smaller market, or combat some of the SaaS platforms like Shopify that were popping up during that era. And we understand, the ones that are, at least the technical users of Magento, this is really more of a platform as a service where you still have access to the flexibility of Magento, but kind of what is so doesn't appear as though you're going after the same merchant that you were going after with the Magento Go. So, how is this going to be more successful, and what is the profile of the merchant that you're looking for with this Magento Cloud offering?
Yeah, so we definitely, and I'll let Doug talk a bit more about the specific learnings from Magento Go. But right now, we're focused very much on really upper SMB and mid-market as our sweet spot. With our Cloud Starter offering, we certainly are applicable all the way down through SMB. We've got Soho customers that are also using the product as well. But we definitely feel like we've learned from the Go experience. We're not focusing on the needs of Soho specifically. We're not trying to compete with the average Shopify merchant. Our strength has always been around that enterprise commerce, the flexibility that it's allowed for rich customization and extension. And we're not going to try to do away with that by oversimplifying and trying to capture that Soho specific market now. So we've been getting brought further and further up market. I think that will certainly continue, and the cloud offering is great for that. But really, between upper SMB and mid market is who we're specifically targeting.
Now, as you mentioned Cloud Starter, kind of educate us a little bit. What is the Cloud Starter plan, and how is that going to differ from the full cloud offering?
Yeah, the first things first, they're both the enterprise Magento Commerce offering. So there's no open source option associated with Magento Cloud. But we have tried to provide a more simple setup for the starter environment, less environments to do integration testing, things like that. So less environments to manage, much simpler infrastructure there. There are, enterprise level reliability, 4 nines in the case of Pro, 3 nines in the case of Starter, and that's simplified the operations behind it, and that's allowed us to make the Starter option a lot more affordable. And then additionally, some of the platform services that we learned were more around enterprise and mid-market needs that didn't come up frequently in conversations with smaller merchants. We were able to remove those from the starter offering, again, to make it more cost attractive. But at the core of it, the commerce functionality itself, like I said, is the same Magento. It allows the same level of customization, the access to the rich extensions that the partners bring to the table, and all of those same powerful commerce capabilities. It really just is more optimized for a smaller and simpler operation.
So with Cloud Starter and the cloud platform both kind of sitting there, you mentioned that you cover a pretty wide range of merchants. Is there any merchant that maybe is kind of clearly not the right fit for either of those offerings?
I mean, I can give my perspective on that. I mean, given the flexibility of Magento and the range of customers that we address, I think there's always going to be use cases that may be possible with Magento, but may not be a fit for the cloud. I think an easy example of that might be a company that wants to build a marketplace on top of cloud. And, they may need other flexibility outside what we allow. Like we try to allow the flexibility around customizing the application, but there are things that they may want to do on the infrastructure side for that wouldn't be a good fit. And so I think there are always going to be cases like that. And I think we'll always have the on-premise options for customers who need that.
Yeah, we'll touch on the infrastructure of cloud just a little bit later. I want to kind of get through some of these other questions before we get too deep in the weeds, but we definitely want to explore maybe some of those limitations that might lead to that answer. Like why would a marketplace not be the right fit? And we'll dive into that shortly. Obviously, for those that have been living under a rock, Magento was recently acquired by Adobe, and that finally closed, a few weeks ago now. And with this platform has been built using Amazon's AWS offerings, while Adobe has really been building and migrating a lot of those services to Microsoft's competing Azure platform. Do you think or anticipate a shift in the underlying technology in the future to be more in line with what Adobe's doing?
So it's still really early in the integration discussions with Adobe. So anything's possible there. We're obviously looking at all of the different things that Adobe brings to our company and the ways that we can use that to provide better value to our customers. That said, I think we've also been told that for at least the foreseeable future, we've got to deliver on our business goals, and that we own our own destiny, so to speak. So I think in the future, I could see us definitely supporting a combination of AWS and Azure. We've built the platform with the intention to be cloud agnostic. We just haven't had a considerable demand for it just yet, so it hasn't been a priority right now. But definitely there's not been a mandate that we have to go standardize on Azure, or really to standardize on any Adobe technologies that they're using or mandates.
So do you see Adobe affecting kind of cloud in any other way? Will we see another run at a SaaS-like offering? Or more budget, for more budget pricing on cloud, or is it going to go the other way? Is it going to be more enterprise and raising the price? Like, how do you anticipate any influence in any direction from Adobe?
Yeah, that's a good question. Again, we control our own business. We have our own objectives we've got to go hit. We have our core customers. One of the great things about the relationship now between Magento and Adobe is, Adobe obviously plays very, very well in the enterprise space. And so I think, we do expect that will give us access to bigger and bigger clients, but we were heading in that direction anyway. But this is not at the expense of the SMB and the mid-market level. We're going to continue to serve them. Our cloud offering will continue to meet those needs. It could be something where we introduce, an upper enterprise offering in the future, but I don't see us abandoning what we've got right now.
Now, there was a little controversy recently caused by Magento Community's own Kaylin Jordan, and I wanted to make sure we touch on each of these things that he addressed in the video he posted, because whether you have a problem or whether you don't have a problem, if people are talking about you having problems, you have a problem. And so, this is a tight-knit community. Word spreads fast. And I wanted to just kind of touch on everything he specifically mentions in the video and just give you an opportunity to address those things. So, number one, he mentions that support is complicated because you're white labeling platform.sh to handle support tickets. So, my question would be, how much of your platform is built, managed, and supported by platform.sh, and how much is handled by Magento?
So it's clearly a mix of the two. I think increasingly we have been taking over more and more of that, but it is a partnership there. We are using their technology. We have really focused on building out the developer tools and a lot of those pieces, giving a lot more self-service. That's something that Matt's team has been very, very focused on, along with, Matt and Chris's teams both have been really focused on there. And, we've been continually investing in the support process, both our processes and systems. There's a lot of investment going on there, and really trying to streamline that and give a better customer experience just as we move forward.
So is that the goal? Like when you first launched Cloud, a lot of that was handled by platform.sh, and you're slowly rolling more of that into the Magento fold, and will we expect that to continue into the future?
I mean, it is definitely a shared responsibility with them. They are a key part of the system and will continue to be. But at the same time, like, we are taking over more responsibility for pieces and really trying to plug the gaps around the developer experience. Really making things more self-service, making it so you have less things that have to go through the support system. I mean, when we launched, there were a number of just sort of basic tasks that required support tickets. And that really created a lot more interaction with support than you would have wanted. And there's a lot of examples about, putting more of that control in the hands of the developers themselves through the ECE tools development that I think will really help. I mean, this product has evolved quite a lot over the past 2 years. And, there were bumpy spots when we launched. I think now it's in a better place, but, we have more work to do to continue to deliver on that promise.
So as far as support goes, what is your current SLA?
So we have on the Pro product, we have the 4 nines availability SLA on all of the supporting services for Magento. So that would be the database, the application server, Redis. And then we have a response time SLA for tickets that's based on the priority of the ticket. And that's published online.
Okay. Now, as far as if it's published online, is that support 24/7, 365 days a year, or are there certain limitations around when that support's available?
Yeah. So for critical production issues, it is 24/7, 365. For other issues, it is typically business hours in the local time zone where the developer is.
Okay. So that includes phone support.
We're looking at options to provide better phone support. We do have a phone line that can be used again for critical production issues, but we're still evaluating like how we can provide better support around phone and those types of pieces.
Okay. And how deep does that support offering go? There are hosts out there, if you're having, time to first byte problems and you're really trying to diagnose inefficiencies in your code or on your website, they provide some limited support around helping you diagnose and debug those. Is Magento doing anything like that, or is it really more they're just supporting their end of the product?
I mean, it is a shared responsibility model. Magento does get customized quite a lot, but at the same time, we do get involved in those. That can be helping customers, understand how to work with Fastly and the varnish-based CDN. It can be, and sometimes helping diagnose code issues. We do also have some services offerings that can be used to help work through some of these types of issues.
Okay. Question number 2 that Kalen brought up in his video is that you do not have access to a development environment.
So I'll jump in on this one. We have recently published with the ECE tools the ability to create a representative Docker image to run locally for dev. And we've had some really positive feedback on those developers that have started to use this. So it provides a very representative local experience that maps well once you start pushing your code up to an integration environment or staging or production.
So the development environment is a Docker image that you run locally, and it's a fairly new addition to the developer toolkit for Cloud?
Absolutely. So particularly with Cloud, we're on a probably the most frequent cadence in releasing updates that we have across our products. So about every 3 to 4 weeks, we're regularly pushing feature updates and new capabilities. So we've got a really great feedback cycle as we have those responses coming in from the developers and merchants and stuff, and an ability to actually go off and make that actionable.
All right, and keep your questions coming in the chat. We're about halfway through my questions. I've tried to leave plenty of time for yours because the viewers always ask the best questions. So please keep them coming. We're going to get to them here shortly. I think the big topic that Kaylin mentioned that got a lot of buzz on Twitter, at least, was 15 minutes of downtime when doing a production deployment. So address kind of is that actually what you see, or what does that look like?
This is an area that we continue to work on. So with the latest version of the tooling, we're down to seconds of downtime, somewhere between 20 and 30 seconds. And in the next week or two, we'll be releasing an update that will allow us to get to a full no downtime deploy. So we'll be using a connection holding technology. So during a deploy, connections will get paused, and then those connections will get restored once those deploys finish. So no matter if you're doing database changes or just app changes, we've seen those no downtime deploys occurring successfully. So that will be coming out very shortly.
Now, something like this, you hear this and you're like, yeah, that's an insane amount of downtime for a production website. 15 minutes would just be ludicrous. Not going to understand how that would get a lot of traction. But Magento's a complicated beast, especially M2 when it comes to deploying static content and all of the things you might have to do if you're deploying some changes to your website. So anytime anybody launches a new product, there's always some inefficiencies. There's some things to improve, especially if it's a complex product like cloud. So was there a time when it did actually take 15 minutes and you've made rapid improvements on that? Or is this just a non-factual number?
No, absolutely. There were times that, to be quite frank, that number was much larger than 15 minutes. But this goes into continuing to optimize the changes we've done around static content deploy, changes in moving the SCD from the deploy phase into the build phase, using sim links rather than file copies. So for us, it's been focusing on that continuous improvement of the product over where we started, and making it better every time we've got the opportunity to.
So the next question that he addressed in his video was slowness, and I don't know how we really address this on a live stream necessarily, other than to ask, is there anything that you see in your technology stack or the way you're running cloud that would make a website slower than any other hosting environment, at least comparable hosting environment?
There's nothing that we see that you could generically throw in a slowness bucket. The items we're typically getting feedback on are items that people will see whether they're on any hosting sort of provider. Things like, it's their first. We see a lot of new M2 merchants coming into cloud, so they're not necessarily used to Varnish. So how they're developing their website can impact how things are cached. And if you're not properly caching the site, you're going to have a different performance view than you will if the site's kind of following the best practices for M2.
Yeah, and you see a lot of people come and say Magento is slow. And what you typically find out is that the developer that created the site may not have done it in a way that gives it the possibility of being fast. Maybe there's a bunch of modules stepping over each other. Maybe there's a million database calls. So it's tough to touch on this on a live stream, but this is constantly something I hear about Magento, and then you investigate further and you find out that it's not necessarily the platform, it's the people who built on it that maybe did some things that are inefficient. So if anyone's got any particular questions about performance, please post them in the chat and we will touch on them. The next thing is the cost, the expensiveness of Magento Cloud. And I wanted to touch on the fact that they got to make sure they keep in mind that cloud includes the enterprise license for Magento. But with your technology stack, and assuming that your technology stack is the best technology stack for Magento, we can debate that. Again, post your questions. If you want to debate the technology stack they're using, we can do that. But assuming that because the mothership themselves designed this technology stack, and that is what they are using for their cloud environment, we're going to assume that it is a proper stack to host the site on. Do you have any general idea of what a Magento Enterprise license plus the same technology you're using would cost with any other hosting vendor? Nobody wants to touch that.
Yeah, I don't know that we've got. I don't know we've got a good answer for what this would cost elsewhere. Doug, let's go ahead if you've got an idea here.
Yeah, I mean, we have priced out some comparable pieces. I think you can look into the details, and you might be able to poke holes in it, but it does seem like it's comparable when you start looking at the enterprise license being included, the CDN capacity that's included, the upsizing, the managed services, all those types of pieces. Now, that said, Magento gets deployed in a lot of ways, and not everybody addresses those problems in the same way, and there may be more cost-effective ways, but we do think it's a competitive offering. And we continue to add other services to it, like we're including the Fastly image optimization service now without changing the prices. So we hope that the value will continue to increase over time.
And in a GDPR world, how does Magento handle privacy concerns? Are you using the data from merchants' accounts internally? How are you, addressing any concerns that anyone reaches out to you as far as data privacy and how you're handling that data?
Yeah, so first off, we did a comprehensive GDPR readiness audit with our own legal team, with outside counsel. We definitely were ready in timeline. We continue to look at how the law is being interpreted actively and seeing what changes we need to make because of that. So the specific question around data use. So we do have access to operational data for our customers, and that does include order volume, revenue volumes, things like that we use. Internally, we use just to help with our performance profiling to make sure that we're testing, against an accurate set of what our actual customer instances look like. We also use it directionally to inform what parts of the product are being used that we would want to prioritize improving on. We don't have access to customer-specific information. And definitely anything that, according to our legal guidance, would fall under GDPR concerns. It is pretty much it's aggregated information, and a lot of it, more of it, trends towards actual operational. Payment types are being used, things like that. What is the nature of your actual Magento configuration?
We do have a data processing agreement that's online that describes, what we do with the data, who has access, and what access is there. And we have the right agreements with all the partners involved who are delivering cloud solution as well. So there's more information online if people would like to get more details around that.
And I've got a few questions left here, and then we're going to get to your questions in the chat. Please continue posting them. If I happen to skip your question, feel free to post it again. We've got quite a few of them queued up here that we're going to go through shortly. So don't forget, if you're enjoying this and you like what we're doing here, hit that subscribe button, hit the thumbs up on the video. That really helps us get this out to more people and spread what we're doing. Next question is, you recently switched to Amazon's M4 processors, and although the M5s were available at the time of the switch, can you kind of fill us in into what went into the decision to utilize the previous generation?
So at the time we started the work around migrating from the C-type to the M-type instances, M5s were not available in all regions. So we kind of made that decision to start with M4s, and then this will be an area where we'll continuously work throughout the year to do those upgrades. That's not it's not a turnkey solution for us to upgrade instantly across all merchants. So we have to be very methodical about doing these upgrades.
So we do a lot of bigger projects on Magento, high SKU count, automotive, year, make, model, fitment stuff. And so we depend on the API usage on a lot of our integrations. On cloud, are there any rate limits on API usage? And if so, what do those look like?
I mean, since it's not a multi-tenant application, I mean, you still have your own instance. We don't have any explicit rate limits or throttling. We do need to make sure that we understand your expected usage during the sizing process and this pre-sales process to make sure you have the right resources to meet your needs, but we don't put any explicit limits in place there.
So the limits are really, it's one of those things that's negotiated in your price when you first start that negotiation, when you size what the instance looks like?
Yeah, the way it works is that we try and understand the use case. We try and ask a lot of questions to understand how much resources are going to be needed when you finish the project. It's a little bit of a challenging process, but we've done a reasonably good job, I would say, about that. And that's included in that upfront price. As much as possible, we do want it to be, this is the price you pay. We don't want to be nickeling, diming people. That said, if people do need more resources, they can adjust that server configuration either with a short term, they need a little bit more capacity that's included. We do include some of what we call surge capacity, which is 45 days at twice the baseline server. And you can pay, a la carte for more of that, or you can adjust that baseline, which has a little bit of a preferential pricing. But we do want to understand the resource needs up front, make sure it's a fit for the cloud offering. Like we said, there are some cases it may not be, and make sure that you have the resources you need for the use case you're trying to support.
Last question here before we get into user-submitted questions, so please keep them coming. I've secured these guys for a couple of hours. We've been about 30 minutes, so we're going to stay here as long as we need to try to get your questions answered. So keep loading them up, please. Developers, especially developers that are not used to cloud, developers are control freaks. Right? They want access. They want full access. They got to have root access to the server. What level of access is a merchant or a development agency that's working on a cloud project going to have to the project? Are they going to have, things like VPN access? Like, what are their limitations around accessing that platform?
I mean, customers do have access. Oh, sorry, Chris, do you want to take that?
I was going to say, yeah, SSH access to all servers, but we don't provide root access. We are working on a secure networking offering that we expect to hit the market probably in the second half of the year sometime. That hits on the typically VPN type use cases.
All right.
Just to clarify that, we do have secure connections for API access via SSH tunnels now. It's just some of the larger customers that we're seeing have been asking for VPN or some equivalent way of integrating, and that's the piece that Chris was referring to.
Okay, and we're going to get into user-submitted questions at this point. We're going to start from the beginning of the chat and try to work my way through. Again, if you see that I've skipped one of your questions, it's been a fairly active chat. I apologize. Just submit it again, and we will get to it. I'm not going to skip any questions on purpose. So first question comes from Aaron Sharp. Aaron, thanks for watching, a regular of the program. Aaron's question is, I heard whisperings that ECE has a clause about Adobe Magento owning any extensions you develop and upload to the cloud. Is this true?
Let me clarify that, because I think that's a misconception and sort of a misreading of the contract. Our Enterprise Edition Magento Commerce contract and our cloud contract both have always had a clause that was in place to not say we had the rights to your code. You certainly own any code that you write, but was intended to say that if we later developed something that was similar, that wasn't somehow in conflict, that you didn't have a right to the idea. A lot of the ecosystem develops features that may show up on our roadmap later. So we certainly do not want to take ownership of your code. The license is never intended to say that. That's not the intent at all. It's just if we were later to develop a similar feature, we want to make sure we have the right to do that. And I think there's been some misunderstanding around what the contract language and what the intent was.
Okay, and again, if you have any questions and want to clarify on that, please post them in the chat. We've got 4 questions in a row here from Karen Baker, and Karen is going to be direct, so expect some really some tough questions here. So we're going to get right into Karen's questions, and her first one is what happens to hosting going to happen everywhere in Magento? Community builds it up, and then Magento takes it private.
Hi, Karen. So no, I don't think that's going to happen. I saw there was another question in there as far as, why we only have one partner here. There are certainly situations where we have felt like we wanted to provide a preferred integration, or in the case of cloud, where we've wanted to provide what we think is our best instance for our customers. We've not, at least to my knowledge, and there's no plans to do this, ever made a decision that has completely excluded other contributions, other partners being out there. Magento is not being released as for Magento Cloud only. You can still host on-prem. You can still host with your own cloud providers. Where we've got preferred integrations, you can still go to the marketplace and find integrations from other partners. That ecosystem is important to us. The openness of the platform is important to us. So I don't think we're exclusionary just because in some cases we have decided to put some specific investment around a particular integration or a particular platform.
So, and I've heard Karen preach about this several times, and I don't necessarily disagree with most of her points on it. And I just want to touch on this a little bit and ask this question because I think this is kind of, one of the things she's getting to oftentimes when she's talking about this topic. But, what decision-making process goes into choosing who the preferred merchants are, our preferred vendors? Like if you choose, a hosting provider that is your partner, are there particular things that go around that? If you choose a shipping service like Tamando to do a shipping integration, kind of what's the thought? What are the factors that goes into choosing? Because that provides a huge advantage for that service being in the core. And you don't have to install the module, and it's already there, and people see the branding every day. I mean, it's not necessarily the death nail. I still don't know anybody that's using the Phoenix Money Bookers, whatever that extension was in M1. But kind of what's the factor that goes into determining who the preferred vendor is?
Yeah, that's a good question. So there is certainly an element of product fit. We do talk to our customers. We try to understand what all their unique needs are. And when we're looking for a particular partner, we'll cast a net, look at the opportunities out there, and try to find the one that we believe is the closest to what our customers need and would make the most sense. We're all big kids here. There is also the business development aspect of it too. And we work very closely with that part of our business. And in some cases, there is a balance that has to be drawn between the absolute best functional fit and then the financial viability of the relationship as well. So that is definitely part of the equation as well.
And I think we touched on, I'll ask this specifically just to make sure we touched on it, Karen. If we don't touch on any of your questions, please let me know or post follow-ups if you choose to do so. What happens when Magento wants to do full builds? Will they create their own SI? And there's already a lot of SIs that kind of cringe at the expert consulting group or Magento services as it's called now. But I think this may be more of just kind of a dig at any point, but I'll ask the question and let you address it. Nobody.
So this is do we ultimately end up doing becoming a full services company? Actually, I'd be really curious to see what Doug thinks about this being a little bit closer to the customer success and services piece. To my knowledge, that isn't part of our strategy. I mean, we do have those services available, and we do step in and help out in some cases, but that's not the priority for the company. I mean, we want to produce the best product possible, Again, we know that we owe a ton of our success to the ecosystem, and there's conscious decisions, even when we're building new features, around, is this something that is the ecosystem is already providing, and we want to be conscious of taking business away. We know it does happen in some cases, certainly, but that's not the intent. We're not out there looking for, where do we have partners that are making a lot of money, and how can we go steal that revenue stream from them? So I don't know, Doug, have you been any closer to this?
Yeah, I can definitely comment a little here. I mean, there definitely are customers who want us to be more involved, and in some cases want us to do projects, and I'm sure we will do some projects. But at the end of the day, Magento is the ecosystem, right? And you can debate some of the decisions we've made about, from different perspectives, but we do understand that, and the value of Magento is this broader ecosystem, this broader community, and a lot of that is the other services that are being delivered there. And so I cannot imagine us neglecting that to the point where we're sort of pushing out other people who are doing projects. I do expect we will take some projects, but just given the volume and range of projects and that importance of the ecosystem to our shared success, I think we acknowledge that, we understand that internally. And again, like, you can debate individual decisions, but I don't think there'll be a collective push where we push people out of any particular area, as Chris mentioned earlier.
So the next question is the last question in this thread from Karen, although I think I see some more questions later on. Are you planning to restrict the extensions that can be in the cloud at any point, or will that always remain open to virtually any Magento extension?
It's something that we've talked about before. I'll get this, Doug. It's something we've talked about before, particularly when we've looked at, again, that starter offering and how to make things easier for SIs to manage the implementation and manage the Magento upgrade process. So the flexibility that we provide, the amount of customizability that we provide, is critical for the platform. It also makes it very challenging for handling upgrades and things. And so, a more extreme view where if we wanted to achieve a true SaaS-like, push button upgrade, one of the things that we looked at would have been potentially locking down the amount of extensions. So far, we've not wanted to go that way. And that's something that we would do with a lot of market research and customer check-ins before we made a decision like that. So certainly not above the starter, a specific offering aimed at smaller merchants. I don't see us ever trying to restrict the extensions.
And the next question is from Eric Hellman. Thanks for watching, Eric. Another regular of the live stream here. You mentioned earlier you were talking about the SLAs and it kind of being based on the priority tier or the priority of the tickets. What's the SLA for your highest priority ticket?
The highest priority tickets are 1 hour response time, 24/7, 365.
And doesn't look like we switched there. So anyway, I'll keep going. If that didn't answer your question, Eric, please post it in the chat. Another question here from Karen. This is probably the easiest question we're ever going to get from Karen, and that is, where is Kalen Jordan? I'm going to take this one. I don't know. I mean, he's been MIA from YouTube for like a week now. He went from streaming every day to not streaming for a whole week. I'm worried about him. Somebody please go check on him. I know he got a new puppy, and he's been really into that bicycle and just kind of trekking around Austin.
Dude, he's in Austin. He's in Austin now. He's enjoying living in Austin and being out and about.
I miss him. He doesn't catch the live stream a whole lot here. At least he's really quiet when he does it. So somebody check on him. Somebody send him a care package or something and make sure he is okay. Another question in the chat here from Eric. How does auto-scaling work? What triggers it? How many of these auto-scaling events does a customer receive for free per year? And how is billing handled after the limit is exceeded?
So the way that auto-scaling works, the way that scaling works is we have monitoring on the system to maintain the availability SLA of those services I was mentioning earlier. And when we detect that there's a need to add resources to the system to maintain the performance, we will do that. There is a manual review process in the middle there to make sure that scaling is warranted, and then we will add resources to upscale the environment. Customers get 45 days at twice their capacity included in their base price, and at that point, when they need more, there is an overage fee that's in their contract. It's a per CPU day price, I believe, that is charged beyond that. And again, that's meant for those sort of short-term burst-like experience or seasonal events. If they need more capacity on a longer-term basis, we can accommodate that as well and adjust the contract in a more cost-effective way.
Eric's next question is about the M4 and M5 processors. I believe we touched on that already. That was kind of in my questions. If we didn't get an answer for you there, Eric, please ask again, and we will touch on that. Marush, that is a new name I don't recall seeing on the live stream. Welcome, Marush. Thank you for your question. The question being... I think Marush may be getting way ahead of all of us at this point. I think he's living in like 2030 or something at this point. But I'm assuming I'm gonna clarify this and let me know. Again, I'm going to have to make some speculations, Marush. Please clarify your question a little bit. But the question being, will Magento 3 have the same transition issues as Magento 1 to Magento 2? I know 3 is probably not coming anytime soon, but if you make the same replatforming experience, clients will jump ship. So I guess Magento 3 seems so far out in the distance. Let's just kind of reflect on maybe lessons learned from that Magento 1 to Magento 2 migration. Any notes you guys want to touch on there?
So TJ, first off, I think we can do a live reveal here on the Magento 3 go-to-market date. Now, we've been told in no uncertain terms that there will be no Magento 3. So I can tell you honestly, we're not working on that right now. And a lot of that is due to the pains that we've seen with the upgrade process from M1 to M2, and the fact that it is perceived as a replatforming exercise. Extension compatibility was an issue. UI ability has been a challenge, according to SIs and partners and things like that. Fortunately, the conversations that we have with our SI partners, it feels like once they've all done a couple of them, they've found a lot of efficiencies. They've gotten much faster, much better at doing these. And so I think, collectively, the ecosystem is less scared about doing M1 to M2s. So hopefully we'll all get past this and get on the new hotness that is M2 and M2.3.
Yeah, 2.3 is coming. 3. We're not ready for that. And of course, M1 was around for 7 years before they released Magento 2. So even at that pace, we've still got 4 years before we really have to worry about it. So, I think we've got a little time there, but I believe Magento definitely learned some lessons on that. Next question is Jason Marrer, another new name in the chat there. Sorry if I don't recognize you and you've been around, but appreciate you watching and asking questions. And Jason's question is, I think there's this perception out there that Magento is just really seriously, aggressively pushing the cloud product. And so Jason's question touches on that, and it's a good question. During the Magento sales process, is there an effort to ensure merchants are made aware that an on-premises hosting is an option and that Magento Cloud is just one of those many options?
I think I can take that one. We do really stress the Magento Cloud solution in our sales process. That said, we do have the on-premise product. There are cases where it's the right solution for the customer, and we will try and guide the customer to what we feel is the right solution for them. There is an emphasis on the cloud product. We see good reasons that we get a lot of learnings out of it, that we want to improve the customer experience as we, improve our process and our products. But we do stress that product.
And again, Jason, if you need more clarification around that or you want to go deeper, please post in the chat. Another question here from Eric. And this is why the viewers always ask the best questions, because you start getting into acronyms and, I got to start looking up definitions to make sure we're talking about the same thing. But hopefully you guys are familiar with the hosting acronyms a lot more than I am. And is Fastly WAF available in blocking mode yet?
Right now, so the Fastly Web Application Firewall, that's what the WAF means, is currently being beta right now for a few customers in blocking mode. So we're in the process of making sure that we have really good tuning around those rules, and we're minimizing false positives. I also saw the related question around the OWASP top 10. We are definitely implementing the OWASP top 10 as part of that rule set for the WAF.
So just to clarify, it's something that's not available currently, but you are working on.
It's only available for the few beta customers right now, and once we get those rule sets worked out, we'll begin rolling it out as a general availability release for the rest of the cloud customers. And there's no action on their part as part of that rollout, right? That's all done at the Fastly level for us.
And again, keep your questions coming. We've only been going for 50 minutes. I got these guys for a whole nother hour and 10 minutes. So keep them coming, and we will get those questions answered. Marush has another question in the chat here. And I've definitely got some thoughts on this, but I've got you guys here to answer the tough questions, so I'll let you have it. And why is Magento so hush-hush about roadmaps? I have never seen a list of what is coming in the next year.
Yeah, I don't think we're hush-hush about it. We do publish a roadmap. We try to update on that on a quarterly basis. We do frequent webinars that are kind of forward-looking in cases. We work very closely with our partner and SI communities around what's coming out to help inform them about what's coming down the pipeline that we need to be aware of. We definitely are always exploring new ways to reach out our ecosystem to make sure that we're getting the word across about what's up and what we've been working on. And we're definitely not touching everybody yet. So it's something that we're improving on. But I wouldn't say that we're hiding what our intents are as far as the roadmap goes. Now, we've gotten a lot better about, I think we were probably a little too over-eager on publishing dates that we were not able to follow through with accurately, and so that's kind of burned the community. So we're trying to be much more careful about that and setting the expectations of what's coming, and less about specifically when it will be coming. But no, I mean, we're not trying to hide our roadmap from anyone.
Yeah, Marush, I think that's kind of my thoughts on it as well, is that Magento has been very eager and maybe a little overly ambitious on some of the dates they've published in the past on those roadmaps. And so I don't, especially if you're working for a partner, you do have access, at least access to someone to ask those questions. But they've been open about, for the most part, I mean, maybe with some few exceptions, about what's coming feature-wise in the platform, but a little less committal on the dates, because a lot of the problems they're solving are complex problems. And so with complex problems, sometimes they just take longer than you anticipate to actually work out. So they've definitely been less open about when it's going to come, or less committal. Not necessarily open, but less committal about when it's coming out. But if you have any questions about the roadmap and functionality that's coming out in Magento, reach out, let me know, and I'll do everything I can to get you an updated roadmap on what Magento's expecting in the future. Aaron has a question here, and I believe we touched on this question in one of the questions I asked earlier. And Aaron asks, so will Magento be using my data internally, like my revenue data. And again, I think I touched on that, and we got an answer, Aaron. If that answer was not satisfactory, please ask again, clarify, and I will make sure I get that question answered. Again, David Nettleton here asks, as an enterprise merchant, who is not a good fit for Commerce Cloud? I think we touched on that, but let's go into that again. Let's touch on that a little bit more. You specifically mentioned, I believe it was Doug that answered that question, kind of that a marketplace that has extreme customization, and they're going to really get hard and heavy into manipulating Magento, may not be the right fit for cloud. Are there any other limitations you can think of that may make someone not the right fit?
Matt, do you have a perspective on that? I mean, there's certainly use cases that won't be. There's so many use cases for Magento that it's always a little challenging to enumerate exactly where it's not.
Yeah, so I think there are a few scenarios where just the level of complexity of the implementation requires the SI and developer to have full control over every aspect of the implementation. And in those cases, and this is where Doug's team comes in, and why we, during the pre-sales process, try and have that conversation on how these implementations look, so that we're guiding to the best solution, right? And even if that's not cloud, that we're helping guide them to the best solution to fit their use cases.
Okay. Again, if that doesn't answer your question, please clarify, ask, and we will come back to it. We've got several touching on here, and I apologize. I'm going through, because we do the interview first. A lot of these questions are about things we touched on earlier in the interview, and I apologize for not getting to them immediately and in order. We just want to make sure we get through them all and we don't miss any. So we had several talking about auto scaling. And basically the way you answered it, they took it as it's not really auto scaling; it is basically manually scaling. And with an hour SLA, it could take a while for the manual scaling to kick in. And then this specific question in that, what is the process for manual scaling? Are you observing it and then you call the customer and ask if you should scale, or is it always initiated by the customer?
So there are two ways that scaling can be initiated. One is we observe that there needs to be a load on that there's load on the system, and we need to add resources to maintain that availability SLA. So that we will notify the customer when that happens, but it's not. We have to contact the customer in advance. The other is if there's a planned event, there's a marketing event, or you have a seasonal business, it's always better to have the resources in place in advance of that. And so in that process, we would like customers to notify us of when they expect that to be. But if they don't, we will still add resources independent of being able to contact them.
And the next question by Eric here, I don't think we got a direct answer. I asked a complex question, and we kind of touched on part of it, maybe not the other part. And he wants a clarification around what parts of Magento Cloud are built and managed by platform.sh, and what part is built and managed by Magento themselves.
Matt, Chris, do you want me to take that? Would you like to take that?
Yeah, you want to get that, Doug?
Yeah, sure. So we own the actual deployment tools. It's built in conjunction with the platform.sh technology. So they own the underlying technology for the integration environments and parts of the deployment process for the pro environments. And they are handling the support for the infrastructure components of the pro environments as well.
Okay, hopefully that gets you an answer. Again, keep the questions coming. I'm viewing the queue here. I've just got questions queued up. We're running low on questions. Again, if I missed one, make sure you post it so we can get that in the queue of questions. The next one is from Karen, and I'm going to elaborate on this question a little bit, Karen. And she asked, why is it manual scaling? And so the question is there any decision that goes into or any technical limitations into why, in this day and age in a cloud environment that the scaling doesn't happen automatically?
So this was a decision that was made early on in the process, was to have that manual review of the scaling process. As we look to improve the offering, having multiple scaling approaches is something that's being considered. Like I say, it was an early decision, and it's one that you can debate. I mean, there are different perspectives on it for sure, and so we're evaluating that as we look at our roadmap.
And the next question is from Slinky. Again, Slinky, thanks for watching the stream and asking your questions. Slinky's question is, several hosting providers didn't even show up to Imagine this year. Does Magento want those providers to exist, or is the end goal to push them out of the market in favor of Adobe's cloud? And I'm gonna elaborate on that a little bit, Slinky, and forgive me if I distort your original question, but 2-3 years ago, hosting providers were the companies that were spending a lot of money in the community. They were sponsoring a ton of events, Mage Titans and Meet Magentos, and hosting providers are one of the core building blocks of the Magento community, because this community does not function, does not grow without the cash infusion that a lot of the hosting providers have added to the ecosystem. And so when Magento puts a competing product against one of those core pillars, then obviously there's a little bit of what long-term effect does that have on the community. So and I think this touches on one of my, the very first question I asked, kind of the thought process that goes into rolling those hosting services into the core platform. So kind of what is Magento's view on the competitive landscape of hosting, with their own offering and the extreme advantage they have, especially for enterprise merchants, because enterprise merchants have to deal with Magento sales. And when they deal with Magento sales, the lead is cloud. And, at least the word on the street is that the salespeople are going to be almost cloud only unless there's some reason cloud doesn't fit, and they're not going to really show their cards as far as maybe there are other options out there. So kind of what are your thoughts on that competitive landscape, and is Magento's ultimate goal to own all of the Magento hosting?
I would almost turn that around in the sense that I don't think it's our goal to push hosters out of the ecosystem, but particularly at that enterprise tier, there are a number of discussions we would not be in if we did not provide a cloud solution from Magento. I think particularly as we get into larger merchants, we're seeing more and more that's the expectation that they have. And so it does create a tension with the ecosystem for sure. There's no denying that, but I think it's just the way the market is pushing us.
So what you're saying, just to make sure I understand, is that as Magento moves to larger and larger projects, and they push further up market into some of those really high-end enterprise deals, that the expectation for those merchants is that it all comes from one source, and that was really Magento's thinking in bringing that offering to market?
I think we see it across the range of size of customers. I mean, it particularly is true for those larger customers, but even on the lower end, I mean, there are a number of SaaS platforms out there, and we increasingly see customers who are looking for that type of solution. So we're trying to balance those SaaS-like benefits with the flexibility of Magento, and that does create some tensions with parts of the ecosystem who may rely on some of those pieces as well. So I don't think it was an explicit intent to push out the hosting providers, but I think it's a side effect of what we've seen from competitive pressures.
All right, we're going to move on to the next question. If anybody wants to dive into that anymore, please post it in the chat, and we will come back to that topic. Albert V is the next question. Albert, thank you for watching. And Albert's question is, what do you see as Magento Cloud's biggest competitive advantage in the hosting space, aside from owning the platform itself?
I mean, I think that is clearly the biggest, right? I mean, part of, like Doug said, why we built this was because our customers were asking for it. It allows us to get closer to our customers. It allows us to take our expertise and our know-how with Magento Commerce and build the optimized hosting solution that fits best with that. So it's because we own both halves of it that we can make sure that those two fit seamlessly together.
All right, so we're getting down to the end of your viewer questions. We're going to call this live stream quits when the questions run out. So please keep posting your questions. We want to get them answered. We want to provide you content that is of value. Again, without you guys watching this live stream and asking questions, we wouldn't have a live stream. I couldn't get great guests like we have today from the Magento Cloud team to come on and answer those questions. So the more people we have subscribed, the more people we have watching live, the more people we have thumbs upping and liking this video, the more people we have sharing these live streams on social media, then the easier it is for me to get guests on to answer your questions. So please remember to hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, and help us spread the word, and keep posting your questions and we will get around to them. So the next question is from Karen, and it's not really phrased as a question, but I'm going to take it as a question here. Karen Baker says that she would be interested in understanding how you deal with database resilience, which is a key part of the system. On AWS, there's a concept of multi-AZ synchronous DB instance. Then you read, replicate, live, standby as well. And I'm going to go ahead and throw in Eric's question on top of that one as well, and maybe you could touch on them both. In that, is cloud cross AZ, is it multi-regional?
So I'll jump in on this one.
Okay.
I got it, Doug.
Sorry.
So depending on which AWS region we're talking about, we either use a 2AZ or a 3AZ setup. So there's a minimum of 3 nodes in the system running in a multi-master Galera setup. And should you have issues with a single node, the automated, or lose the whole AZ, the automated failover does occur. In addition, we also allow the separation of reading from the slaves and writing to the masters. So we do support that multiple resiliency sort of strategy they're asking about.
So just to make sure we touch on everything, so it is cross AZ and multi-regional?
It is not multi-regional. It is multi-AZ.
Okay, and I want to ask one more question here from Eric, just to make sure we specifically answered the database questions. If one of the 3 databases fail, will cloud automatically fail over the database connections to one of the others, or do you need to manually fail over those connections?
It's automatic failover.
Okay, and again, if we didn't answer any of those database questions, please hit us up, ask it more specifically, or ask it again. If you just ask it again, even if it's the same question, if we didn't answer it, ask it again, and we will try to figure out what we're doing wrong and why we're not getting you the answer you're looking for. So the next question here is from Daniel David Nettleton. David, as I will affectionately refer to him forever. He's been on the live stream earlier. If you don't understand why I call him David, then you just got to go back and you got to watch that episode. I'm not going to. It's an inside joke at this point. So his question is: if cloud is a good fit for almost every merchant, is there training materials for merchant developers, small teams who are used to working with a particular on-premise stack?
So there is DevDocs documentation out there available for cloud. There is at least one Magento U course available for cloud today. And the team was actually out in Barcelona this week working on the next updated Magento U course for cloud. So there is several bits of documentation available. In addition to that, on the community engineering Slack instance, there's a cloud channel. So our internal teams also are listening and participating in that cloud channel where questions pop up so that we can help get those answered.
How did we go about getting access to that Slack channel if we're not already in there? Anybody? We're there.
Yeah,
you were muted.
So yeah, sorry about that. I was muted. I believe it is. You know what? I'm not going to guess on it. We'll make sure to send the link out. So if you go to the site for the instance, you can sign up yourself. But we'll make sure we get the right link shared out on that.
And if you really want to know how to get access to that Slack channel, hit me up on Twitter at eCommerceaholic. Let me see if I can roll my name card there. eCommerceaholic right there on Twitter. If you tweet at me, public or DM, I will get you an answer to that question so you will know exactly how to get into that Slack channel, which is a great place to be to get more access to Magento and to be able to ask your questions directly, whether you're a partner or whether you're not. The next question here is a question from Slinky, and this is my type of question. I love this question, Slinky, and I'm going to elaborate on this a little bit. One of the problems we have with Magento, one of the biggest problems we have if you're used to dealing with small merchants, and I'm strategically located in the middle of nowhere in beautiful Opelika, Alabama, so I am very steeped in small merchant e-commerce, and one of the problems we have with small merchants is kind of that hurdle they have to get over to get on the Magento platform. And that hurdle for getting a website set up and being ready to sell is a much, much higher hurdle on M2 than it is on M1. I mean, it's big. And when M1 came out and those early days when so many small merchants were jumping on it and so many small web development shops were recommending it for their merchants, it was the easiest thing out there. I mean, it was as good as anything as far as what it took to get a site installed and set up, and someone that maybe they didn't understand Magento best practices, but they could get something up and going, and they may hack the core, heaven forbid, but they at least could get going on the platform. And Magento 2, that hurdle has increased, and it's obvious that we're losing some market share from open source to SaaS platforms because of the easiness of just kind of going and paying a fee and they're set up and you're ready to go. Now, it's a good debate as to whether or not those merchants should be on M2. There are instances of that where maybe they should be on a SaaS platform. But Slinky's question is, does Magento have anything on the roadmap? Is there anything in particular being worked on to kind of lower that barrier to entry for Magento 2 to make it easier for SMB other than Cloud Starter? I mean, we kind of touched on Cloud Starter, but Slinky goes on to mention that smaller M1 stores are leaving Magento when they see the barrier to migrate to Magento 2. So what are your thoughts around kind of combating that and lowering that barrier to entry?
Wow, there's a lot of questions in that one. So I think this is something that has certainly evolved. We heard a lot of concerns around M2. We know that there are a lot of SIs, a lot in the ecosystem out there that have built custom tools, their own internal training, knowledge repositories about how to do things on M1. And so, yeah, certainly there is some pain in transitioning to M2 as an SI. But we've also done polling. We get a lot of feedback that, yes, once we have made that transition and we've put in the time and energy to learn M2, it is a better solution than what was out there on M1. In some cases, M1 may have been more, I was not around as part of the team during the M1 days, but anecdotally have heard that was true in some cases. But, again, consistent feedback across the board. This is a better solution. When you have an apples to apples comparison between M1 and M2, it performs better for functionality provided, or when you're comparing the same functionality provided. And so, yeah, there's definitely a learning curve associated with it. But is it any different than the learning curve when M1 was released? I don't know that is the case. So, we've spent a lot of time trying to improve the training materials and the onboarding around Magento 2 and making it a bit easier. Starter on cloud, for instance. And then we've got developer-focused initiatives, things like progressive web applications that we're working on right now that is all around making it easier to do front-end of Magento, with the goal meaning that you don't have to have Magento experts to customize the front end and make that faster and easier. So we're constantly trying to get more approachable. If we look at the SaaS e-commerce platforms that play really well with merchants that are not making any revenue, very small merchants, that you can push a button and you're up and running with a basic set of functionality in 5 minutes as a business user, that's not where we're trying to play. We're known for the ecosystem. We're known for the customization. We're known for the rich functionality. We are really a SMB and mid-market oriented solution, and I don't see us changing there. And if that means that we're not the right platform for a very, very simple merchant, or a merchant that's just getting started in the world and is looking for an ultra simple basic solution, great. We wish them the best on that platform, and we'll be there when they have gotten to where they have higher levels of needs, and we are a better fit on.
Yeah, I don't think they're if you're drop shipping cheap Chinese stuff and you're got no investment in your platform whatsoever, and you're just really getting started in e-commerce and you're learning, and you just haven't kind of gotten over that hump of generating some real revenue on your e-commerce site, so you don't have the money to invest in the platform, then I don't think necessarily there's an argument, a SaaS platform is the right fit for you. But as an ecosystem, we definitely have to. You asked the question, or you kind of said you weren't sure if the learning curve for Magento 2 is steeper than it was for Magento 1 when it came out, and the answer is yes. It's very much steeper. I agree with you that everyone I deal with seems to struggle at first, and then once they get the hang of it, they love how Magento does a lot of things, and it's definitely a better platform. My argument for that would be I think e-commerce in general is a lot more complicated than it was when Magento 1 came out. And so the fact that the platform is more complicated is reflective of that. And I believe that it's about to get even more complicated with PWAs and all of these kind of components and things like that you've got to be able to do to give a proper mobile experience. So the system is getting more and more complicated, and we definitely, as a community, as agencies, we've got to figure out a way to lower that barrier to get more people to keep fresh blood into the ecosystem, to get more merchants to leverage the power of the platform, and to make it cheaper. It just ultimately cheaper to build on the platform. So I don't know if we have any answers to your questions as far as what those initiatives are, but I know those conversations are being had in the Magento community, and it's definitely something that all of us, whether we work for Magento or not, need to continue to focus on. Any other topics you guys want to add, or anything else you want to touch on that?
I think you're right. I mean, definitely comparing the feature sets that when M1 initially launched with what M2 initially launched with, and what we've added even in the few years since M2 went live, a lot of the complexity is with the amount of functionality added. Again, our docs, we've got a great docs team that we've that has been working on how can we be more strategic with documentation. Likewise with Magento U, we've got some new leaders in that area as of probably the last year that are trying to improve that. We're trying to improve partner relationships. So it's certainly not to say that Magento 2 is easy to get up and running on. And we do know that we continue to work on that and make it easier and things of that nature. Same for merchants as well. How can we make the admin experience and the functionality that we're offering easier for merchants to use as well? That can be challenging too.
All right, so again, if we didn't get your questions answered, please continue to post them. If I skipped your question, keep posting. Let me know that I missed your question. We've got the way the questions work is we have the live stream. It's pulled in, and then we have a queue where I have DJ, our editor over there, actually queuing up the questions. So if he missed one, I'm not going to see it. Repost it. It's fine. It's easier even if you tag me in it. So we're going to continue to go through your questions. We've still got about 40 minutes here. If the questions keep coming, we'll keep going. If they run out, then I'm going to call it a day. I'm going to go home. I'm going to have some fun. I'm going to work on my house that I think I just may have sold. So keep the questions coming so I don't have to go home and work on the house. This is much more fun. Next question is from Aaron. And Aaron, I think we touched on this a little bit, but we've got a little time and we don't have a ton of questions queued up, so I'm going to go ahead and ask this one again and just make sure we've touched on it. Aaron's question is, so how does Magento's cloud differ from other hosts' cloud?
Are we talking about just from a feature set or our competitive positioning? I think we've talked a lot here about some of the features that are bundled in and the monitoring, the security, things like that are on top of the basic infrastructure itself. So I feel like maybe there's something else that she's asking here that we missed.
Yeah, Aaron, we're not 100% sure which portion you want us to touch on. So if you want to clarify, I will get that asked and make sure we get you an answer to that question. Next question is from Eric, and I think he's talking about that uptime guarantee on Magento Starter, and why is Starter only 99.9%?
So I think the reason that we went with the lower availability with Starter was to also get to a lower price point. So Starter is still in a high available solution, but you don't have some of the same capabilities of having a multi sort of setup, right? So without a multi-easy setup, there's just there's just no way to make sure you can guarantee that for 9 availability. So for us, it was a bit, this was a decision around helping get Starter within the price point that we wanted to for those merchants we were targeting.
I'd like to follow up on that too, because I
Sure.
think there was another comment about the cost of Starter, and it's with Starter you're getting the commercial license and the hosting for a price that's fairly close to what the commercial license was. So if you look at it just as the hosting cost, it looks very expensive. If you're sold on some of the feature set that is in the commercial version of Magento Commerce, then it looks much more reasonable.
And the next question is from Jason Cochran. Jason, another regular to the live stream. Thank you for watching and thank you for your question. However off topic it may be, it's okay. I'm here to provide value, and if you want to talk football, damn it, we're going to talk football. So Jason's question is, will Auburn beat Alabama this year? And what is Auburn's disaster recovery plan and RPO in the event of a catastrophic butt whooping? Well, Jason, war damn Eagle is the first thing. And, of course, we're going to win the game this year. I mean, did you see the game last year? Did you see the two teams playing in the national championship game? And did you see the ass whooping that Auburn gave to both of those teams? And in the case we happen to lose the game, we're Auburn fans, man. We're Auburn family. Our morale, our self-worth is not tied up into a football game, so we'll be just fine, man. It'll be just fine. But we're going to win anyways. It doesn't really matter. And I love you too, by the way. Next question is from Tom, and Tom sent me a nice bottle of whiskey that I'm going to be drinking maybe next week. I don't know. See, no one even noticed last week that there was no bottle of whiskey on the table for last week's stream. I'm only going to be drinking if the guests happen to be drinking as well, because it's kind of degraded. This started off as a conversation to where we're having some whiskey and we're having some drinks and we're talking about e-commerce, and it's turned into a TJ drinks while other people watch him, and that's just a little weird and unusual. So in the next couple of weeks, I'm going to get on that bottle of Four Roses that you sent. I definitely appreciate that gift. And Tom's question is there a plan to open Magento Cloud for non-enterprise license installations? Are you guys going to offer cloud at any point in the future for open source?
I think at this point the answer is no, right? We very specifically chose to target cloud as an enterprise only solution, right, and not look at mixing open source and commerce into the same solution.
And the next question is from Eric. Will cloud continue coming down market further? And I can't even read anymore, Eric. Sorry. Will cloud continue pushing down market?
Yeah, no, I don't think so. Certainly, we think that Starter is certainly viable for merchants on the lower end of SMB as an option. But our focus is firmly in that SMB and mid-market range. And there were comments about Magento Go earlier on. We've certainly learned about what happens when we try to really split our focus from the needs of very, very small merchants all the way up into enterprise. You wind up probably spreading yourselves too thin and not having a good solution for anyone.
And another question here from Eric. Will you continue using platform.sh in the future, or does the roadmap include rebuilding your own and truly controlling your entire platform?
Yeah,
Chris.
Don't know on this one. Certainly we're looking at opportunities. Adobe coming in, that provides another area to explore that wasn't available to us previously. But at this time, no official plans to move off of the platform.
And we've got some clarification from Erin around her question. And her question, I'll go back to her question originally, and it was, how does your cloud differ from other hosts' cloud? And her clarification is security, pricing, support, and the tech stack. Like, how do you guys stack up to, as far as security, pricing, supported tech stack, to what the other hosting vendors in the Magento space are providing?
I mean, we certainly have tried to pull together a competitive offering in terms of best-of-breed cloud solutions. We're using AWS for the hosting, we're using Fastly for the CDN, DDoS protection, adding image optimization, and in the process of adding the web application firewall. And it is the one production environment that Magento actually stands behind. We support a lot of different deployment configurations. Apache versus Nginx versus other pieces, but this is the one that has the sort of the focus of the product and engineering teams in terms of the deployment pipeline and the actual configuration. So you certainly could construct this own setup yourself, but at the same time, you'd have to figure that out, and it is the one that we are focused on from an actual complete configuration as opposed to just supported software and pieces.
And the next question is another one from, and again, Aaron, if we didn't get your question asked, I apologize. Keep poking, keep specifying, and we will continue to dig into that topic. The next question is another one from Eric, and he kind of mentions that the Cloud Starter starts at $2K a month. Now, I will clarify that also includes the Magento Enterprise license, and that it's one of those where if you're buying Enterprise, then the hosting is almost free, because that's about what your Enterprise license is going to start at. So with that clarification, $2K a month for 99.9% uptime. And his question is, so it's not multi-AZ, is it a single instance?
As I mentioned before, it is running in a high available solution. So it is a containerized solution running across a grid. So that containerized solution can, if a host were to go down, those containers will get redistributed across the grid.
And Joe, the next question is from Joe Shelton. Joe, I think this may be another new face in the live stream and the chat. Thanks for watching. Thank you for your questions. And Joe's question is, how is support, email, and tickets being improved? Do you have some roadmap? I mean, you kind of mentioned several of those things in that you're constantly working to improve those offerings. Are there anything in particular you're doing around increasing your support?
I mean, there are a number of things going on around support right now. There's a lot of investment in that area, so there'll be more resources. We have a new VP who's responsible for that area, who's looking at making improvements and, want to continue to improve the experience that customers have running on our cloud product. So between the product efforts to make things more self-service, take more things out of the support flow, and then the improvements in the support processes that we're making, we really are hoping we're going to be providing a great customer experience, and always improving that customer experience.
And I believe I've started a little bit of a college football discussion in the chat here, and we've got Mage Mail saying, "Go Buckeyes." I cannot say that I support or approve of that messaging in the chat, so I apologize. Y'all all had to read that. And again, Aaron is commenting that Jason was trying to get me to say butt whooping, and so maybe with my southern accent, that's a funny thing to hear. I don't know. It's okay. We're not going to lose. It doesn't matter. We're good. We're all good. So we're going to continue with your questions. We've got about 30 minutes left here. Again, if the questions run out, well, then we're going to call it quits. At this point, it looks like we're down to several questions here. So I will continue to ask those, and some of them we may have touched on a little bit, but Martin in the chat here asks, is the plan for ECE to eventually be rolled into part of Adobe Experience Cloud, or is the roadmap for the foreseeable future to keep this as a separate product?
Yeah, that's a great question, and that's something that we are still early on with the larger Adobe team. We do see a lot of synergy between the product lines. We see a lot of opportunities for Magento to provide better integrated commerce capabilities within an experience manager-led branded experience. And then on the flip side, for merchants that are maybe a little bit below Adobe and AEM's target customer base, we do see that there's some great tools that Adobe provides that we think our core customers will also get a lot of benefit from. So we'll definitely be developing a roadmap for how the product lines do augment each other. But I don't see a future where Magento is only sold as a part of AEM or Adobe Experience Manager. I think we'll continue to be an independent offering.
Now we had Matt Assi, I believe. I believe I mispronounced his name the entire time he was on the live stream. It looks like Assi. I think it's Assi. And you specifically mentioned at this time, I know the Adobe acquisition is very, very new, and it just closed. And so there are a lot of people have a lot of questions that just can't be answered at this point. What is Adobe's influence over this? How is Adobe going to change that? My question is a very, very simple one, and not to put you on the spot like most of these questions are doing, but I'm going to anyway. How long do I need to wait before I can ask the questions about Adobe's influence, and you can say, okay, it's been long enough. Now we kind of know what that influence is going to be. How long do I need to wait to have you back on so that I can ask those tough Adobe questions?
So interesting context. We all have our HR orientation on Monday. So we officially become employees of Adobe from the HR tools standpoint then. Now, it's definitely something I think will continue to evolve over time. Candidly, we've been told that our first priority is to get Magento 2.3 out the door and to continue building the best we can for our customers. And so, like I said, we've been having a ton of conversations with product leaders across the existing Adobe portfolio, and we'll be developing a roadmap that I think will take many quarters to go and implement. I think we will start seeing integrations. There's certainly a few that we're really excited about that we think we'll be working on first, but there's also some longer tail opportunities, and so I think this is something that will continue to evolve. But I would say later in the fall, maybe there's a key event or something that might be coming up where I would guess that we'll probably have some preliminary information to share at that point in time.
Well, if that event happens to need a mediocre MC that has a small YouTube following, let me know. I'll be happy to participate, or maybe we can schedule something after that. So is that what we are to expect? Is obviously when the acquisition was announced, 2.3 was well down the road, and we're all excited for it, and it's coming soon. How soon we don't really know yet, but obviously that was really planned out and well into development. So is once now that 2.3 is almost here, and once it rolls out, is everything that was kind of on the roadmap after that kind of let's rethink it. Anything that might have been on that map is kind of let's halt this, let's rethink, and that's say 2.4 is where we're really going to start to see that Adobe influence.
I think we reevaluate what we plan to do at the outset of every release. We certainly have big plans and ideas about what we'll be doing 3 years from now. But the reality is, we want to look and make sure that we're working off the latest in every release. So we are starting to think about what happens post 2.3. And certainly the opportunities posed with Adobe is a part of that. But it's not a rethink everything. A lot of the same priorities and the same goals that we had beforehand, before we had any idea, or at least I had any idea that Adobe was going to be a thing. I think those are all still most relevant and most important. So it'll be a bit of a blend. A lot of things that we would have been working on anyway, and probably there will be some influence from what we can get out of the Adobe product line, and then what the Adobe products are expecting from us.
All right, so we're going to get. Go ahead. No, continue.
In terms of the discussions I've been in, Adobe seems to be taking a very measured approach and really wanting to understand what they can learn from us as much as what we can do and learn from them. So I think it'll be a very cautious integration as opposed to what we might have seen at various points in the past.
Good. And we're going to get back to viewer questions here. And Eric has another question. And does Starter also include the 1-hour support SLA for critical issues?
I think this was answered in the chat already. Actually, Starter has a 2-hour response for critical issues. It's got a lower SLA for that.
Yeah, and we want to, even if it's answered in the chat, and I don't necessarily see all the answers, I just see the questions queued up here. So we might double up something that is answered in the chat, but a lot of viewers may not see the chat, or who knows how this is going to be distributed. So I wanted to make sure I covered this. Jason says, and this, ladies and gentlemen, is how you get an Auburn fan wound up. And Jason, if you know me, then you'll know that I haven't even come close to getting wound up at this point. That it goes like that was on a scale of 1 to 10. That's like a 2-3 for me, bro. So tell you what, Jason, let's schedule it. Come on down for a football game. Let's go out here. Let's watch. Let's find a good SEC game on me. I'll get some tickets. You come down. You get your own hotel room, and I'll buy the tickets. We'll go to a game. You'll see how we do it here in Auburn. So if you've never been to a football game in Auburn, it is a fantastic time. It is one of the best venues, one of the best shows in all of college football. This is a very, very small town, and there is nothing else to do. So we go all out when it comes to football games. Another question here from Eric, and again, we're getting down to the bottom of the questions. We got about 20 minutes left. If you continue to ask them, we'll try to get them answered. If you happen to be catching this in replay, post them in the comments, and I'll do what I can to get your questions answered. Eric's And I think we may have touched on this. Actually, I think we touched on this a little bit earlier, Eric. But I'll ask it again because we've got a little time and we don't have a ton of questions left. How deep does Magento support go? Will they debug application, time to first byte performance, and tell you what code is causing that slowness?
I'll jump in on this one. So, where we run into those significant issues and we need the utmost expertise, those issues will actually get escalated out of support into my core engineering team. So there are multiple instances, and we're running a few right now where our performance engineering team's actually engaged in helping them get down to getting those solved, right, and providing expertise. And whether that's, we find a core bug that we need to go off and address, or we've identified some, challenges around the specific extension that will actually, go help fix and contribute back to those extension developers, or, code written by an SI. We're here to make sure the customer ends up in a good spot. So, whatever that means, that's Chris pointed out earlier, right? That's one of the value propositions with cloud, is that, it comes with not just the team around supporting the hosting of our solution, but it also has that deep integration into our engineering teams.
And the next question here is from Slinky, and Slinky asks, what is better, the Magento 2 GitHub issues page or Magento support if you're having issues? And he clarifies by asking, because multiple times I've seen core bugs introduced on newer versions and they go unaddressed. So I'm gonna try to clarify, Slinky, again. If I misunderstand your question, please clarify for me in the chat, and I'll do what I can to readdress the topic. But if you're having issues with Magento, is it better to promote or push that to the Magento 2 GitHub issues page, or is it better to go through support and address it that way, and then Magento will handle it from there?
Yeah, always best to go through support, and that's where we should be directing all enterprise customers. GitHub is primarily meant to be for open source customers to submit issues. And then I think the other part of the question was around instances in the past where there's maybe been a bug fixed in an older version that's been reintroduced, and hopefully that's the question. There has been cases where that has been a challenge, and we've done some support improvements around just process of always fixing bugs now in the develop branch, so that it's always fixed in the latest and greatest, and then backporting appropriately to address obviously where the issue arose. But yeah, that was there was a question earlier about how have we been improving our support processes. That's definitely one of them that's changed. I know probably in the last maybe 2 to 3 quarters, I think we started doing that.
And the next question is from Joe Sheldon, and I don't know if, this is a Magento Cloud webinar. I'm not sure we'll get you. I'm not sure we have the best person on Magento's team to answer this particular question, unless this is about cloud. So I'm just going to assume this is about cloud, because that is the topic we're talking about. So, and Joe's question is, could you quickly describe the division of responsibility between Magento support and SI? So say I'm an SI, and that's a easy assumption because I'm an SI, and we have a client on cloud and they're having some technical issues. Where does that kind of division of responsibility between your support and us as an SI, kind of how does that work?
Doug, you want to touch that one?
Sorry, what was the question? I was watching the chat. Sorry.
A little broken up. Just the division of responsibilities between the SI and Magento support, and where, what types of things we expect the SI to field.
Yeah, so it's definitely a shared responsibility model. We try and stand behind the infrastructure and the out-of-the-box product, but there are customizations that SIs make that can impact the overall performance of the system, and we're trying to maintain that flexibility. So that's where we like to try and draw the line. As Matt said, there are times that we get pulled into situations where either a customization or an extension is impacting the experience that the customer is having. But from a clean breaking of the line, like the out-of-the-box product and the infrastructure versus customizations and those types of pieces is the easiest way to explain it.
And the next thing is from Jason Cochran in the chat. He says, Texas A&M at Auburn, November 3rd, 2018. If you're serious about going to a football game here at Auburn University, Jason, hit me up in another channel. We will discuss it off of this live stream. Texas A&M at Auburn sounds like a wonderful game, but I think that overlaps with Meet Magento New York, which means I am not going to be able to make that particular game. Late October, early November is going to be a very, very busy time here at Jamerson, but let's find a game. Let's make it happen. I don't think that one's going to work for me, but let's discuss it in another channel and see if we can make it happen. And the David Nettleton can't handle the Alabama heat, then he's just going to miss out. All right, so again, we've got about 15 minutes here, so I'm going to try to get through some of these questions. Mr. Nettleton has a question, and I'm going to elaborate on this question a little bit. His specific question is, are there any cool dashboards that are customer visible with cloud? Executives love cool dashboards. Now, I know that cloud is going to include some business intelligence access, but I'm going to elaborate on his question a little more, and please touch on his exact question. But are there any features that are maybe on the roadmap that are cloud specific? It would be what I would add to that.
Well, I mean, I think there's two things to that. Sorry, Chris. You go ahead.
Go ahead, Doug. Okay. So there's two halves. Maybe this is where you were going, right? There's reporting for your business and how your website is doing. I don't know, TJ, you'd asked about cloud specific. I don't know that we have any cloud specific reporting there, though we do give out Magento Business Intelligence Essentials as a part of cloud, which does provide a lot of really cool dashboards that executives do like. But then on the operational side, what is specific to cloud is things like New Relic and Blackfire that provides performance reporting on how your actual cloud infrastructure is doing. And that certainly is a part of the offering as well.
All right, so if we didn't get your questions answered, please let me know. Or if my elaborations on them just kind of mangle it to where it doesn't make any sense anymore, just clarify in the chat for me. We've got Mage Mail here asking a question. I'm going to assume that's my man Dwayne in the chat, and Dwayne's question is, what should my open source customers expect as a migration plan or migration path to the cloud?
So I think I can take that one. If they're running Magento 2 open source, the modules are shared between open source and the commercial version. They're just additional modules that are in place. So they could pick up that code with the commercial license. The main difference is something that we see across deployments. So there are certain things that Magento Cloud expects in terms of either development practices or implementation practices that you need to make sure you're testing against. So examples of those are, we're very dependent on, really believe that Fastly is a key component of the system. And so making sure things are working with the page cache. We see customizations and some extensions that can make pages uncacheable. That's one piece. Making sure things go through the dependency injection compilation process when you go into production mode cleanly is another area. And being familiar with things like Git for source control and Composer as your preferred deployment method. These are all things that I think are good practices around Magento 2 generally, but they're things that are really required when working with a cloud product. So those would be the main things I think to be aware of, and we try and call these out in our dev docs, the specific requirements the cloud has.
And the next question is from Steve Robbins. I believe that's another new face in the chat. A lot of new faces today. And while we're here, if you're new around here, don't forget to subscribe, hit the thumbs up on the video. We'd love to have you as part of the e-commerceaholic family. And this apparently is a great topic to draw a lot of new faces to the live stream. And Steve's question is, and we touched on this a little bit, but he's got some specifics here that I think are interesting. And what does cloud offer in terms of performance analytics? Are there any integrations with New Relic or CloudWatch? And any plans for custom dashboards, Kibana, Grafana, Logly? I believe I pronounced those correctly.
Well, I think we touched along that, you get the New Relic APM as part of cloud. You have access to Blackfire for debugging. In addition to that, we're working on providing a consolidated log aggregation solution that you'll be able to query across all the different data sources, whether it's Fastly, whether it's Nginx, Magento, to make that experience easier to manage. So, this is an area we continue to identify gaps and add in additional capabilities. So, I know that there was a follow-up question around, maybe the New Relic data and Blackfire data in MBI. Those are great ideas, right? That's where we are looking to have that continuous conversation where, we can continue, we can add those additional capabilities as we move forward, right? As we find more and more gaps and the ability to make things simpler and, more usable and provide that greater value, we definitely want to do that.
Yeah, and as far as business intelligence goes, I'm actually going through business intelligence training next month in Atlanta, Georgia. They've got a lot of those out there. If you're, a partner in the community, you might want to look for those training opportunities. I believe the business intelligence training is free, and I will actually look to get some of the folks from BI onto the live stream to discuss what all of the capabilities are when pulling data. I know it pulls a lot of data sources, but I need to sharpen my knowledge of business intelligence as well, and I will see what I can do about getting someone on to answer any questions you may have about it. Don't forget to continue to submit your questions. We've got about 9 minutes here, and I'm running really low on questions, but tag me if it makes it a lot easier if you tag me. If you tag me, DJ will add it into my queue. I try not to look at the entire chat because when it's this active, because I have a hard time keeping up with the questions, and you don't want to just look at video of me just staring at my screen here trying to figure out where we're at in this particular conversation. So, and I believe, let's see, Leonardo, another new face to the chat. Thank you for your question and thanks for watching. Leonardo's question is, how is your onboarding process for new developers to the cloud space? Devs that are not with an SI or partner but want to learn. Is there going to be a dev access to the platform? And this is a great question because I would assume that most of the merchants that are on your platform either they either have devs that work for them or devs that work for a partner. Do you have a lot of merchants on the platform that maybe have developers that work for a non-partner, or what does the onboarding and resources look like and the access look like if you're not a partner?
So we definitely have a variety of things. One is the Magento U course that we're hoping to push out. I mean, Matt mentioned the workshop that was going on this past week to pull that together. That's been a long time coming. We do have a resource that gets assigned to every customer, regardless of whether you're working with a partner or not, that we call a technical account manager. And they are there to mainly answer these types of questions about how you work with the cloud, to point you to the right documentation, those types of pieces. It is an area that with partners, I think we've done some initial work to make sure they're enabled. There's certainly more we can do there. For people who are not working with partners, there's definitely our dev docs that are available and those onboarding resources when you're actually working with a cloud project. So the customization of Magento is really pretty much the customization of Magento following best practices and working with Composer and a Git-based workflow. ECE tools, which is the cloud deployment pieces. It's really the dev docs and the onboarding process at this point in time, I would say.
All right, I think we've gotten through everyone's questions in the chat at this point. Again, if you're new around here and you're not subscribed, please help us out. Help us help you. Hit that subscribe button. Thumbs up the video. Follow us on social media. You can find me on Twitter at eCommerceaholic. eCommerceaholic.com will forward you back to YouTube here. You can find me on virtually all social media platforms, all major social media platforms at eCommerceaholic. I appreciate you watching the live stream. If we did not get your questions answered, please send them to me on Twitter or post them in the comments of this video. After we finish the video, it will be posted here on YouTube for you to access and to watch back into the future. We are not going to have a live stream next week. I'm going to take a week off. I've been very, very busy trying to get my house ready to sell. And you know what? I need some time off, so next week I'm going to take it, but we've got three. We haven't announced the third one yet, but we've got 2 live streams planned 2 weeks from now and 3 weeks from now. We're going to be talking to Yotpo about reviews, and we're going to be talking to BananaStand.io about social proof, and I think both of those are going to be very interesting topics. Please join us for those. You guys always ask the best questions, so it's going to be lame if I have to ask all the questions, because I just ask basic questions and you guys really get into the weeds. So thanks for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Any parting shots, guys? Anything you guys want to wrap up with?
Thanks a lot for having us on, and for all the great questions and giving us the opportunity to come and talk about the cloud product. I think to echo something that we've said a couple of times in here, this has come a long way since the launch about 2 years ago. And certainly we wouldn't try to tell you that we did it perfectly right out of the gate. And so hearing all the feedback from the SIs and the community in general is how we have been able to make this product get better and better. So we really do open ourselves to the feedback. We want to hear about what could be made better so that we can produce a better product.
Hey guys, I am here to help you, so let me know what topics you want to talk about, what guests you want to have on the live stream. We definitely have a Magento-focused audience, and I have a Magento background, but it doesn't have to be a Magento topic. So whatever you're interested in e-commerce, I will try to reach out. I will try to get someone on. We've got several suggestions right now. It takes a little time for me to schedule guests and find experts in those topics, but let me know. Otherwise, I'll see you guys in a couple of weeks.